the great saint Neem Karoli Baba, he said, suffering is grace. It's very difficult from, what you see. Oh, that doesn't make sense. But if you look at it deeper, there's so much grace in the challenges and the suffering of our life, because it forces us to look for something, a new way to live.
Ram Dass talks about fierce grace. It's a similar thing. It's like through these challenges, if we're willing to look at them, we can grow tremendously and evolve and learn. And as Govinda said, it's not like just because we practice yoga, life is sweet all the time. We're human.
Hello and welcome to Curious Ones podcast by Yandara. I'm Yael Ginzburg, the host of the podcast, a yoga and meditation teacher and philosophy lover. Each week you will hear eye-opening interviews with the different teachers of the Yandara Yoga Institute located in beautiful Baja, Mexico, along with other teachers that pass through here. This life-changing knowledge shared through authentic, heartfelt communication will help you live a happier, more fulfilled, and connected life. Let's dive in. I'm here with a wonderful couple, Govindas and Radha, who are here with Bhakti Fest, the retreat. They are wonderful kirtan artists and yoga teachers from California, where they own a studio named Bhakti Yoga Shala, a studio which now after COVID has transformed and become something else. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Yael. Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. So maybe we can start with that, with the evolution of your yoga studio from where it was, the community you cultivated, to where it is today.
Sure. So we started a yoga studio in Santa Monica, California, called Bhakti Yoga Shala in 2009. And really the intention behind it was to have a home in Los Angeles for kirtan and for bhakti yoga practices. And of course, still doing asanas and other types of yoga, yin yoga, vinyasa yoga, these types of things. But really the focus was to have a space and gathering place for kirtan and bhakti. And so we had 11 really good years. And then, of course, COVID hit, and, our landlords wanted us to keep paying when we couldn't even get in the space. So we had to let go of the space. And as you had said, things have transformed. And, we pivoted almost immediately and started doing, 100% online when COVID first started happening, and offering trainings and daily satsangs and yoga classes online. And then about a year or so into the pandemic, a friend led us to a very beautiful outdoor space at a friend's home, a big, beautiful deck in Topanga Canyon. And that's how we've been doing outdoor yoga classes and kirtans weekly at this space in Topanga. And since then, now we kind of have a hybrid type of thing going where we meet once a week, whether it's for yoga class or kirtan in Topanga. And we still have lots of stuff going on online as well, too.
Yeah, and different events like this retreat.
And different events, retreats, trainings.
Yeah.
That sort of thing, exactly.
Your focus is very much bhakti, and I know I've also spoken with a few of your students from back home, and they speak about your classes as magical, combining kirtan with yoga. Maybe you can speak about how that came about.
Yeah, well, it really just came about for our love for yoga and kirtan. And when we opened the space, the main intention was to bring kirtan into the space so that it's a part of really every class. And that's kind of just how it happened. And when we first opened, we had a class on every Sunday for 11 years. We taught this kirtan vinyasa class. And it was usually where Govindas is teaching and I'm singing mantras and a few English songs in there. And we always have a live drummer. So it became a very big part of our lives. Sacred Sunday. It was every Sunday. We were there at 10 a.m. And Govindas guides the class as I just sing the mantras in the background. And then every once in a while we'll be in a certain pose and we'll have everybody chant. And then it always builds to a dance party. And then we bring it back down and have everyone in Shavasana.
Oh, amazing. There's never too many reasons to dance and sing, right?
That's it.
Well, this might be a difficult question because I know it's hard for me to answer about myself, but you're very established in the kirtan world. And yet there are many, many different kirtan artists. What do you think makes you guys unique?
Interesting. That's a great question.
I think the first thing I could say is that we're husband and wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is something unique, and that we both lead. You know, very commonly with kirtan artists, there's just one leader, and that leader, he or she, is calling all of the mantras out, and everybody's responding back, and we take turns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she'll sing a verse, everybody responds, and then I'll sing a verse, and then everybody responds. So you get this kind of masculine, feminine balance, which I think is really nice. And I think a lot of, as you said, as Radha just mentioned, that we are husband and wife, that sense of unity within us. And I think that's something really, really special.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I think Govindas, the more that he's diving into this world of kirtan and studying, I feel like you're bringing in more of the traditional melodies, and then maybe I add more of a Western kind of influence because that's how I grew up with music. And so it's like this nice mix of Eastern, Western musicality, if you will.
You started as a
singer, dancer, actor, just love to perform.
Yeah.
And used to perform my whole life. And then it was through meeting Govindas and being introduced to this path of bhakti and kirtan that it was so liberating. It was like, for the first time, I wasn't performing. It wasn't a performance. I wasn't being judged.
Yeah.
It was a meditation. And I feel like my heart and my voice has opened up so much more through these mantras.
Yeah. Wow. I understand completely what you mean. My sister is a model, so I know so much about this world that it's all about like everybody scrutinizing how you look and what you're doing and is it good enough, is it not good enough, and it's puts so much pressure that it takes the whole fun out of it.
Yeah, I grew up modeling. That's what brought me to America, actually. I'm from Australia. And yeah, it's tough. You have to be very strong in yourself, and when you're young and you're influenced and you're either too skinny or not skinny enough, it can be very challenging. So this path of yoga, it was such a healing path that continues to, you know, enrich our lives and help us.
What do you feel is the biggest layer it added to your life as individuals and then as a couple?
Well, I mean, for yoga as a whole, that you have a path to follow. A very ancient path with teachings and practices to help us live a healthy, creative, balanced, and God-focused life. Without that, I can't even imagine being a human being in this world right now because of the incredible challenges. And especially after COVID, that, you know, I mean, what the one thing that we could hold on to during COVID and all of the confusion and different messages we were getting in every direction was that we had this path, this dharma, these teachings, these eternal, untainted teachings. of truth that we could just stay focused on. And of course, in this path of bhakti, it's your relationship with God first and foremost, and to put the divine at the very center of your life versus chasing materialism, which is what the world is doing right now, and probably always has done, and we're given a different way that is, bhakti yoga is commonly called a treasure, the wealth, the greatest wealth. We may not be physically wealthy, meaning we might not have a tremendous amount of money in the bank and big, beautiful home and cars and that sort of thing, but we have the treasure of devotion and the treasure of love in our hearts, and this is the greatest wealth of all wealths. There is not a greater wealth.
And you always use this word, it's like an anchor to bring us back to ourselves.
Yeah. It's so easy to like float away, definitely. But for that, it brings up for me how you define success, right? Because it's so easy to take your definition of success from outside, from what the world sees as success. But then are we really happy? Is that when I check in with myself, in the room at night when nobody's watching, is that how I really want to live?
And I think for most people that have been brought to yoga, and I ask this question all the time in workshops, classes, who was brought to yoga? And when I say yoga, whether it's kirtan or meditation or asana, whatever, just who was brought to yoga through suffering?
Wow, that's probably like 90%.
And it's always 90%.
Yeah.
Most people were brought to yoga because they were unhappy, whether it's unhappy with your health, your mental health, your physical circumstance, broken relationships,
career,
death of loved ones, divorce, career, whatever it may be. And that's why the great saint Neem Karoli Baba, he said, suffering is grace. It's very difficult from, what you see, that doesn't make sense. But if you look at it deeper, there's so much grace in the challenges and the suffering of our life, because it forces us to look for something, a new way to live. And for so much of us in the West that haven't been brought up in this tradition, this path is a new way for us, and it leads us. Somebody many years ago said, yoga is very simple. It takes us from wherever we are to a better place in our life.
Yes.
And that's what yoga does. It doesn't mean there's not going to be challenges along the way. Of course there are. It's part of being human and a part of our karma. But it takes us, wherever you start the path, it takes you to a better place.
Yeah.
And Ram Dass talks about fierce grace. It's a similar thing. It's like through these challenges, if we're willing to look at them, we can grow tremendously and evolve and learn. And as Govinda said, it's not like just because we practice yoga, life is sweet all the time. We're human.
Definitely.
You know? I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've been in an argument or had a disagreement right before we are about to chant. Or lead a class, and that can be very difficult.
Of course. But
100% of the time for me personally, by the end of the class or the kirtan, it's not even by the end, usually just midway or somewhere right at the beginning, it all dissolves. Whatever we were arguing about, it doesn't mean it's gone, because I'm back to my heart space.
Yeah.
So it's such a healing practice.
So true. Myself. So true. Yesterday, Yogrishi, who is one of the teachers here also, was speaking about it in a way that it was funny, but it's so true. He said, we have to charge our phones every day, right? And we charge it for 4 hours and it lasts for 6. And yoga is such a more efficient charger, like we do it for 1 hour and then we're charged for 23 hours.
That's great.
Yeah, and it's so true because we all know this feeling of feeling drained, right? And the yoga practice, even though sometimes it even takes some effort from us, or sometimes a lot of effort, you feel so charged after the class. And as opposed to, let's say, the workout classes that we've all been to, which are great in their own way, but you leave like drained, you're dead, you have to recover from that class. So I really feel that yoga is different in that way. So what are some of the practices that you use to charge yourself?
Well, for myself, the physical practice of yoga, I like to practice most days, usually not on the weekends because we're running around with kids.
Yeah.
So usually during the week, I practice an asana practice, which is continuing to evolve and shift, and kirtan, mantra, meditation, japa. I like to do pranayama, breathing exercises. We like to do arti. We have altars around the house, so we will have special pictures and murtis of deities or people in our lives, family members, and we offer the light. We like to make our food as prasad, so we might play some mantras in the background and have a candle lit and some incense burning while we make our meals, and then offer it back.
Yeah, as an offering.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's what you said was really powerful, that in bhakti yoga, specifically the style of practice that we're connected to, is that it's this turning your life into an offering back, an offering of gratitude, essentially. And whatever you may be doing, exactly like Radha just spoke about, even your food, you cook, you turn your kitchen into a temple.
Yeah.
And just the process of your cooking becomes a prayer of remembering where your food comes from, and all of the people that have put their love into growing the food, and ultimately where it all comes from is the blessings of the divine. And one of our teachers way back when, Bhagavan Das, he said, all of the mantras, all of the practices, all of the prayers, they all mean the same thing in bhakti yoga. Thank you, God, I love you, God.
Yeah.
Thank you, Goddess, I love you, Goddess. And can you imagine walking around your life in that state of gratitude, of thank you, humility? I'm not the doer, I'm not in control, I'm not entitled, and this is the way of the world. I mean, we look at the way of the world right now. So there's a real, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the reshaping of ourselves. This is what we're doing when we practice yoga. We're reshaping ourselves from living in an egoic way to living in a humble way of soulfulness and loving devotion to the divine, to God, and to all of God's children, to each other.
Yeah.
And I just want to add that that's not 100% of the time too, because it's not easy just to walk around in gratitude and love for an hour,
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there, that this is the intention and this is what we strive for, but it's not 100. We're human beings,
Of course.
Boy, are we human beings. And, thank you for saying that, because most of the time we're not living like that. Our ego is governing the show, as Krishna Das says, the movie of me.
Yeah.
Me, 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 me. Everything is about me. But to have a practice gives us a little bit of space from the dominating control of the selfish ego. So in having this practice, we begin gradually to live more in the spirit of service and love and devotion for all beings. And maybe it's the most challenging thing we can do because the ego is so strong.
Yeah.
There's an old saying from Ramakrishna. He said, the ego is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant.
What does that mean to you?
So we begin to not operate from our ego, but operate from our heart. Use the ego to serve the heart. Use the powers of mind instead of stroking our selfish desires, the fire of our selfish desires, to use it, to turn it towards the heart and serve the heart.
And I think it's you, O'Brien Guest. Your ego is not your amigo. Really? It's kind of funny.
That's very funny.
And back to something, this is something that we learned from Ram Dass. And Ram Dass, he married us.
Oh, wow.
And gave Radha her name, and is a very, very dear teacher. He passed away in 2019, and was really for me the big opening. And one of Ram Dass's teachings, so many teachings, but my favorite teachings of Ram Dass are about embracing our humanity. That we can't practice being phony holy, which is one of my favorite sayings there is. We can't pretend to be spiritual and not honor the human stuff of our life. And so it's like, we're one part human and one part divine. And how can we walk with both of those at the same time, honoring both sides of the coin? And that's a very difficult practice, but I think, again, something to strive for and practice walking with.
Yeah. Well, I have so many questions right now. I would love to speak about the story of your name, but maybe I'll ask about this because I feel that the way that I am able to stay connected to this path of not being drawn into just my human side is through community. So, and being around like-minded people and being around teachers that inspire me to be in my highest place. And I feel that from what you're saying, because like you mentioned, Radha, that you might be having an argument just before, but when you step into the class, you just transform into a different place in order to serve the people that are there to receive a higher energy, a higher being. So how do you feel that you cultivated this community?
Well, I think what you just said is extremely important and always has been in the yoga tradition. It's called satsang or sangha, which is having a spiritual family that we can lean on and share our lives with and remember together who we really are and share the joys of our lives and share the sorrows of our lives and share our struggles and share our victories and walk the path together. And now, again, another one of Ram Dass's greatest quotes, as he says, we're all just walking each other home.
Yes.
Not sure if you've heard that before, but that's what we're doing.
Beautiful.
In satsang, we're joining our hands together in friendship and solidarity and walking each other home. Well, where is home? Home is in the heart. We're walking each other back to our heart, which is where the self lives, the true self.
Radha, maybe you can speak about it.
Yes, I was going to say that you said we could come into something maybe in disagreement but it's really the mantras. It's this music that it's not like I'm even trying to say, okay, I need to, it's just I close my eyes and I start singing and that's the medicine. And yes, community is so important. When we first opened Bhakti Yoga Shala, we were teaching at a yoga studio like 2 blocks away. And we thought, great, they're just going to follow us up the street and it will be pretty easy. But we realized that, no, we had to start from pretty much scratch. And for 11 years, we built this amazing community. And some of our dearest friends to this day, people met there. We had a wedding there. People have had baby. It's just been so beautiful to watch the evolution of people that have become family, I don't know if I answered the question.
It's beautiful.
No, absolutely. That was beautiful. And I think what it comes back to, and what Yael, you were talking about, is that we're social beings. Very, very few can isolate and live in the cave by themselves.
Right.
We're householders, we're not, most of us, I should say, we haven't left the world. We're in the world. We live in the world, but practice not living of the world, right? As the old saying goes. But we're social beings, so we need each other. As the Dalai Lama says, we're interdependent upon each other.
Yeah.
And when we had Bhakti Yoga Show, we were there every single day, and it was like a big party. It felt like a spiritual party. Wow. Like we went and saw our best friends every day, and we came together and we did practice together, and everybody would hang out in the courtyard for hours after, and it was a real jewel, especially as people have shared, it was like, oh, it's the only thing that kept me in Los Angeles, or every time I would fly through Los Angeles, I would go straight to Bhakti Yoga Shala, and so things have changed, and now we can meet online. The online satsang has been really, really powerful as well too.
We met people from all over the world, and so in a way, when the physical doors closed, we were able to reach more people. We had people from Saudi Arabia. We have Japan, Shetland Isles. Have you ever heard of that place? It's amazing. We have a dear friend, and she just surprised us and showed up at the retreat yesterday. We've been online with her for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Her and her daughter, so beautiful. And then she surprised yesterday and showed up. She came all the way from Scotland to Mexico, and it was such a beautiful moment and experience. And so it's like family,
Yeah, definitely. That's so beautiful. It's definitely one of the best things that came out of this whole period of COVID, that the borders changed. And instead of being in one place, the internet, people kind of demonize the internet and social media and all of that, but I see so much good in it as well, that it really allows us to stay connected with people that we wouldn't be connected with otherwise. Like high school friends that I wouldn't be still connected to them if it wasn't for Instagram or something like that. There's so much good that comes out of that. And as you mentioned, Govindas, I think that we're way more interconnected than we even realize, because as you mentioned before, like even the food on our table, somebody had to grow it. Somebody had to farm it. Maybe it's the same person. Somebody transferred it to the store, and then the store owner. And then, there's so many different people that have taken a part in getting it to our plate that we don't even think about how much we rely on other people. Hey, I'm quickly interrupting the episode to extend an invitation. If you are interested in deepening into any of the subjects we talk about on the podcast, we offer many different experiences on our beautiful grounds here in Baja, Mexico. From 9-day modules such as sound healing and yoga nidra, to breath and meditation, as well as 200 or 300-hour yoga teacher trainings, and many different shorter retreats. Check out our website, Yandara.com, to see all the information about the different experiences. Let's get back to the episode. You also spoke about being householders and part of just day-to-day life, and I would love to speak with you about that, because I feel like so many people that leave trainings here or leave retreats, they have reached this amazing place and then they go back to their life. And I've heard many people speak about the difficulty of maintaining the practice and maintaining this feeling that they were able to reach. So maybe you can speak about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's great topic, I think, to talk about. We've devoted our lives to these practices and to the kirtan and yoga as a whole. But we're just human beings doing things that human beings do. First thing in the morning, she's making the lunches. We're taking the kids to the school. We're, walking the dog twice a day. We're, watching basketball on TV. It's like, live your life. Live your life. But at the same time, remember. Neem Karoli Baba, I keep mentioning his quotes: love, serve, and remember. Do what you do in your human life, and whatever. Just because you do yoga doesn't mean you can't, wear nice clothes or whatever your thing is, fashion or sports, or, you don't have to give any of it up. But bring your yoga into whatever you love to do and whatever your path is. And what is yoga is the quality of mind and heart and intention and breath and love that you bring into whatever you're doing. To me, that's the yoga. And so, as I had mentioned, love, serve, and remember. Love, serve, and remember. Live your life, but keep loving and serving and remembering where it all comes from, and remembering that the presence of Spirit is here with us always.
Yeah.
And what you talked about is the high of being on retreat or being and then going home. That's something very common that a lot of people. So there's no real answer to that. It's just that you're on retreat. It's like you're doing all these practices and then you go back to your life and you're like, okay, now I got to, make the lunch and do the things. So it could be a little bit of a high to a low, but then you just have to keep doing your practices. And that's what helps you to stay grounded and connected to your heart and the wonderful things that you were doing on that retreat. Somehow you try to, bring it into your life, your daily life. But it's definitely like a common thing that we hear and experience. And that's why it's so wonderful now that we can be together and we can be doing retreats again. Because for so long, it was just looking at people on a screen,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that's the hard part for some people. I speak with my friends that did the trainings here with me, and that's the hard part for them to do their practice, to get on the mat every morning. But I love what you said, that it's really about realizing that it's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. And in that differentness, finding the remembrance and the love and the intention to the practice.
And I think as well, too, is that after retreat or teacher training or coming to an environment like this, people go home to certain parts of the world and they don't have satsang. They don't have spiritual community. They don't have spiritual family. So it takes even a more added inner fire of devotion to stay on your path, because you know what's important. You know what's right. You know how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And we know when we don't dedicate our lives to our practices, where that can potentially take us as well too, that we get lost in our stories and in our worldly stuff. And so maybe that, what could we say, fear of what could possibly happen if we don't do our practices gives us more inspiration to stay connected to our practice.
Yeah, that's very true. I think fear of something that will happen if we don't do something is a huge motivator for people. So I think that's a great point. Think about how you will feel if you don't do it, rather than just pushing through that moment of, I don't want to get on the mat, and, just trying to weigh it out, which one will be worse.
And there's always going to be the voice of doubt. There's always going to be the voice of, I don't want to.
Yeah.
sit and meditate. And there's the saying that we have is, do your practice when you feel good. Do your practice when you don't feel good. Do your practice when you're happy. Do your practice when you're depressed. Do your practice. Keep showing up and doing your practice, whatever your practice is.
Yeah. Even if it's like 5 minutes.
Even if it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to ask you also about raising children. You have 2 beautiful children who are here with you. So I know that there's definitely a challenge there because the spiritual world is not the mainstream and children tend to want to be like their friends and, kind of be like everyone. So how do you balance that, bringing the spirituality to their life, teaching them the spiritual values, and then still being in the real world?
A long time ago, we had a wonderful teacher called Mark Whitwell teach at the Shala. And I remember our dear friend Rima asked, I'm a mum of 4 boys, how am I ever going to practice? How can I teach my kids? I want them to, know the gift of yoga. Like, what is your advice? And he said, just do your practice. Just do your practice, and they absorb it and they see it, and they will eventually want to be interested and maybe practice with you. But with our kids, they go to a public school. We live in an area where it's a suburban area near nature. And, Govindas grew up Jewish. I grew up Christian. And we, practice these practices from India. And so we just feel like our kids are being exposed to all these wonderful religions, way of life, and it's giving them faith, and I think that's so important. And we try to really just teach them about being humble and being grateful. And our kids, Malachi was coming to Bhakti Fest when he was 6 weeks old, Ruby 3 weeks old, so it's just kind of part of their life. They grew up at the Shala. But I would say now that our son's getting a little older, it's maybe getting a little more, he's not like, I don't really want to come to the kirtan or this kind of thing. It's not easy, especially when we live in a really wealthy area where a lot of their friends' parents have a lot of money and their houses are a lot bigger than ours. Or they have all the newest toys and this, that, and our kids share a room. So they're like, I want my own room. I think it's a beautiful practice because it's teaching them. We're trying to just really instill gratitude, just being grateful, and trying to broaden their minds. So it's not just where we live and their school, and it's exposing them to these communities. Last night, everyone's like singing and dancing and we're chanting, and they're just kind of there, just absorbing it. And it's pretty amazing. I certainly wasn't going to kirtans at 7 and 11. I certainly wasn't going on yoga retreats. They're the only kids here. So it's a pretty amazing experience. And I don't know, did you want to add anything?
Sure. I think what came up last night, that this big group of people were all singing Hare Krishna at the top of our lungs, and they're just sitting on the back in their iPads, but they're getting something. And I really believe exactly what Radha said, just observing, just being around it, they're getting something. And when they're old enough to, make choices for their own, they'll have their own free will to make choices as what's right for them. One thing that that Radha didn't mention, but is diet, is that, we're vegetarian, and we eat as close to 100% organic food as possible. And most of their friends eat the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
And even as a kid, there's a joke of our son and our daughter now, they would go at 3 or 4 years old to a play date, and someone, the mother or father would offer them a snack, and the first thing out of their mouth would say, "Is it organic?"
Oh my God.
And the parents,
That's amazing.
thought it's hilarious
It's
that the
amazing.
kids would say that. But, I see the challenges in it as well, because our son's going into 7th grade. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with 7th graders, but they get out of school and they all want to do is eat candy. They go to the markets and they eat candy. And our kids don't eat candy. I mean, we don't let them eat. They organic candy, but not processed white sugar candy stuff. And I think it's a little tough for them. I think it's a little tough for their friends that, and the parents of their friends that we're a little different. But we believe and have such faith in what we're doing and the importance of it that we hold very strong to those values. And, I've grown up with digestive troubles. What brought me to yoga was called ulcerative colitis. That was my suffering that brought me to yoga. Irritable bowel disease. And I believe it's because of what I ate as a kid.
Of course.
I ate so much crap and fast food and candy and white processed sugar and all of these things. And I really believe that was the gift, though, that brought me to this path. And, what we're trying to do is instill within them why we don't just eat whatever we see at 7-Eleven or, whatever market we're at. That there's, this body is our sacred temple. And our food is what nourishes us and keeps this body alive. So food is of the utmost importance within the choices that we make, and they're doing great. It's not always easy for them, but they're doing really good. But they've never eaten anything but vegetarian, so they never know. It's funny, Sridhar, who's running the retreat, or who's the head of Bhakti Fest, the creator of Bhakti Fest, he was telling this story last night about bringing his kids up vegetarian, but he said at 18 you can do whatever you want, and at 18 they all went and they just started eating whatever they want. But then they found their way back to what they were brought up with. So
it's so funny. I just remember when our son Malachi was really young and we went back to Australia. I'm from Australia, and we went to visit, and my brother-in-law was like, oh my gosh, you need to feed him a Big Mac or something to slow him down, because he's like got so much energy because he eats so pure. And because like Big Mac, I mean, it's scary. That's the thing. It's like we're educating our kids and hopefully bringing awareness to their friends and parents, because it's scary what is in food these days. Like it's so scary what even teachers will just be like, oh, you did great, here's a candy. One time the PE teacher gave our son a candy. I was like, God, this is not okay. Yeah. Do you read the ingredients? It's not even food. I mean, we're very strong about that. Like, but we let him eat. It's not like we make him eat like strict, kitchery every day. Like we make it fun. We have taco night and we do pizza and all this kind of stuff. We just keep it clean food that we know every ingredient. We're not giving them anything with color number 6 or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's like they know it's like chemicals. And then we wonder why kids now obese, depressed, all these people giving their kids medication and all this kind of stuff. Start with just eating clean food, It's a big thing for us, but I think we try to balance it by just, it's all about balance. Yeah.
I feel like we can talk about this for hours now, because there's so much crazy things that are happening that people are just doing so subconsciously, like just giving their kids like McDonald's and candy and such bad food that it's not even about like being spiritual or being, like hippies. Right. It's about just being conscious of like not putting poison in your body.
Yeah, and these kids are so pure. Yeah. They're born into this world so pure, and we want to sustain that as long as we can. And the food is one of the ways that we can do that. And there's this word in yoga philosophy called sattva, and so we try to eat what's called a sattvic diet, and that's a pure diet with as much whole foods as we can, organic foods as we can, and again, we're not perfect, but it's something that we strive to do, and it's I think it's very important for the yogi or the yogini to recognize that what we put into our body, it affects not only our body, but it affects our mind as well too, and it affects our energy, of course.
Yeah, they call the gut the second brain.
Yes.
And I just like to say that I actually came to yoga I was a model, and I never not ate, but I definitely didn't eat enough at times, and I skipped meals. There was even a point in my life where sometimes I would throw the food up, and I'm not proud of that. But through yoga and Ayurveda and meeting my beloved, it healed me so much. I mean, and being pregnant, that was really a big thing for me, because it's like, okay, now it's not just I'm taking care of another body now. I need to nourish myself. And it was really through yoga and Ayurveda and being in a balanced, stable relationship that really helped me to heal those parts of myself that I thought really if I was just skinny, then I would be happy. And it's just so wrong. Yeah. And I just want so much for our children to know that like eating is healthy and 3 meals a day, some snacks. Like I never want to pass that on to my children. I want them to see us eating healthy, and we do. We eat healthy, and food is such a big part of just your overall health. And I think to pass that along to our children so that they can see and they understand why we eat this way, but as well that we're not like completely rigid and strict. And we sometimes we're out with his parents or something, there's not an organic, fine, we'll go out to dinner with you guys. Yeah. But it's balance. Yeah.
And I think it goes beyond food. This conversation is that the way of the world that we live in, and especially in America, I mean, probably down here is a little different, but the programming of the media and the advertising, the messages that we get from every direction.
Yeah,
and
definitely. That's such an important, I just want to make sure that was recorded, what Radha said.
Please.
So that we're not good enough, that we
need this product.
Yeah, you need this product to make you look better, or you need this product because your hair doesn't look good because you know.
Yes, definitely.
And most of the stuff is coming from corporate.
Yeah, people that want to make money.
People that want to deepen their pockets and not look out for our well-being.
Definitely.
So there, we have this word in this world that we live in now called wellness. It's this word that's spread like wildfire, and it's amazing. It's amazing that, and so we want to live with well-being, and how can we do that through, through, instead of chasing things on the outside, knowing who we are on the inside, and who we are is love, and living from that inside out type of way of living, instead of chasing, thinking that next thing on the outside will make me happy, knowing that the joy is who we are and it lives within ourselves. And that's how we can live a good life. Otherwise, we're like a dog chasing its tail. You ever see a dog chase its tail, but it never can quite get its own tail.
Yeah, you eat the food that makes you feel bad, and then you need to take the medication to feel good, and then, just a cycle that never ends.
The cycle that never ends.
Yeah.
And these practices and this philosophy, it gives us another way.
Yeah.
It gives us another way. And that's a gift. And that's why we... we honor this tradition. I mean, we weren't born, obviously, as Indians or, as Hindus or But we sing these mantras that come from India. We do these practices. We guide others into it. And, you know, it's for everybody, but we want to honor where it comes from. Mm-hmm. You know, there's this conversation that's happening of, you know, cultural misappropriation and the colonization of yoga and this sort of thing is big right now, and it should be. I do believe that. Mm-hmm. And I think for us, this sense of humility coming into leading these practices and guiding these practices is that we weren't born into this, but our hearts are dedicated to this, and you know, we love this. I can speak just for myself. The moment I was introduced to the spiritual culture of India, it just made so much. It just felt so right to me, and I just, you know, want to honor where all of this stuff comes from to the depths of my heart and soul. So.
Beautiful. I completely agree. I feel like, of course, this is a very common conversation right now. And I feel like my personal opinion is if your intentions is just to feel good and do good in the world, then how can that be bad?
That's what we always come back to that. I mean, people, there are always going to be haters, people going to question whatever, but it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. If it's pure and it's coming from your heart, then, you know, how can anyone question that? And we've talked to friends who are from India, elders, young people. They're like, amazing. I love that you know, that you want to share this with the world because it's coming from that place. And I think people can feel that, you know, that if it's coming from that authentic place as opposed to not.
Definitely. 1000%. I think when I asked you the first question, or one of the first questions about what makes you unique, I think that's definitely a part of it, the intention with it. So you feel it when you speak, you feel it when you sing. So thank you so much. Just being conscious of your time, I'll ask you one of the closing curiosity questions. Maybe you can each answer, what are you curious about right now?
Notice how you pass that to me.
Yeah.
I just thought laughing.
I'm curious as to what the next step of yoga is in this world, because what we've seen because of yoga, because of COVID, that so many yoga studios have closed down. So what does it look like? What is the next step in this? There's not as much yoga around, at least in Los Angeles, as there was. What is the next step, you know? And I guess maybe that's the curious within myself as well, too. You know, we live in this time of insecurity and instability. Nobody knows what the next part of this ongoing process will be. And so I'm curious about that. What is it all going to look like as we move forward?
Interesting.
And I think I'm curious, just personally, I'm at a point in my life, I just turned 40 last year, and our kids are getting older, so I have more time in my day. So I'm just in this place where I feel like curious as the next kind of chapter, that the kids are older, they're not relying on me as much, and I have more time, and what do I want to put that energy in? And I mean, it's very clear, it's music, I love to sing, but I'm just curious as to like how that's gonna unfold and what that kind of looks like, if that makes sense.
Definitely. That's beautiful. Well, guys, thank you so much. I had such a good time.
Thank you.
Looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Now, after this time to nurture your mind and your spirit, we invite you to take a moment to consider others. A kind wish might come to mind. Know that what we learn becomes more valuable when we apply it and share it with others. So share this episode on Instagram stories, tag Yandara and I, or share with a loved one so that more people can benefit from it. Our hope is that the search will lead you home to who you already are, to what was always there. We'll be back next week with more inspiration, honest conversation, and insight into the energetic world around us. Thank you for listening and watching.